Hi ladybugs, how are we all doing today? I'm doing pretty good. A little bit of a down day, but not too bad. You know, stuff always happens. You just gotta be positive. Anyway, I'll put Shiley on the camera for a second because I'm collecting some stuff. There's Miss Shiley. I think I'm gonna get a Ziva. I'm really excited. I'm going to trade 2 of my smaller babies to an artist who I think is going to make me a Ziva. I'm super excited about it. But I guess we'll see. We're both kind of thinking about it at this point, so nothing is set in stone, but we're going to use this one today. Isn't that cute? So nothing is set in stone yet. Today we're going to dress Taylor and Shiley and Tegan. So let me get little Taylor. I wish I had weight. I have to get some weighting beads because I really want to weight Taylor. She doesn't weigh anything. And for the artist that made her, the Elvira and Vladimir artists, you know, the Russian artists, they sell their babies for like $3,000 or something like that. I mean, they're not silicone, they're vinyl. And they sell their babies for a lot of money, like a lot more than most vinyls. So you would think that they would be weighted well. But they said to keep the prices reasonable, which their prices are not reasonable. I know they're nice toddlers, but for $3,000, they should be weighted. I'm sorry, that's just my opinion. And I wholeheartedly believe that for that amount of money, you can afford shipping for babies that are weighted. You know what I mean? We're not talking a couple $100. You know, $3,000 is a lot of money. So, and I understand that they do good work, and that's why, you know, their babies are so expensive. And I get that. But as far as I'm concerned, like when you charge $3,000 for a vinyl doll, you can afford, you know, to pay for the shipping. You know what I mean? That's crazy to me that they don't weight their babies. Taylor is beautiful and I love her, but she has like no weight in her. All she has in her is stuffing, like in her legs and her arms. There's stuffing in all of her, but there's no weight. So she's like really lightweight. And I prefer my babies heavier. So I'm going to have to reweight Taylor. She's beautiful just the way she is. She's beautifully painted, but she needs some weight. I don't know why I like heavy babies. I just do. I think they feel more realistic and authentic, and I just like them to be heavy, you know, especially my toddlers. This Taylor weighs like 4 pounds, and all that's the weight of the kit. Like there's nothing in her, you know what I mean? As far as I'm concerned, for $3,000. And I think their babies go even higher than that. I mean, I didn't get her from them. I got her from somebody else who had gotten her from somebody else who got her from them. So, I mean, it's not like I had to pay the $3,000, but for that price tag, you should definitely have your babies be weighted well. That's just my feeling about it. I agree that they're wonderful artists and they do an amazing job. I think it's awesome how well they do on their babies because Taylor is just gorgeous. But I just think she should weigh something, you know. She's so light. So anyway, that's my gripe for the day, is that Taylor should weigh more. Yeah. And I know shipping overseas is a lot of money, but like I said, it's probably $100 to $200 from Russia to the US. So you can afford that if you're charging $3,500, $3,600 for your babies, you know, for your toddlers. Don't get me wrong. I do not price shame artists. I have nothing against a toddler, you know, $1,200, $1,500. I think that's reasonable for a toddler, but you're going to go $3,000. Everything, including the weight, better be perfect. And I love Taylor to death. I think she's absolutely stunning, but she is just not weighted well. She's not weighted at all. And I love to look at her, and I want to hold her more often, but every time I pick her up, she's just so light. It feels so fake, you know? I think that's why I like them heavy. because they feel more authentic. Here's little Taylor. Isn't she beautiful? She is beautiful. She just needs some weight. I need to, I started using those, the sandblasting sand from Harbor Freight. And it's really, really fine. Like you need to put it in like a plastic bag or something, as opposed to like a stocking. Unless you were to like multi-layer the stocking, I guess that might work. Because weighting beads have become so unbelievably expensive. Like years ago, I got 100 pounds of weighting bead for $100 from the little glass beads. And now like 20 pounds is like $70. It's crazy how expensive weighting beads are nowadays. So I think I'm going to get some of the sandblasting sand because that's reasonably priced. I don't remember exactly how much it is, but it's way better than the weighting beads. The weighting beads are super, super expensive right now. Like I said, I used to get 100 pounds for $100, but it's so expensive now. I can't even afford it. So I used the blasting sand, the one from Harbor Freight years ago. And I didn't like it as much as the, just because it's so fine and it makes it a little bit harder to manage. But I like it in the sense that it's more moldable, so it kind of gives it like a beanbaggy feel. And yeah, you can totally use that instead, and it's much more reasonably priced. And just to put this out there, the other thing I like about using plastic bags in the babies is that when you pick them up, you get that crinkly sound that you get with plastic diapers, the ones they don't make anymore. Because the bag crinkles. So I kind of like that too. I know it's not really the diaper that's crinkling, but it sounds like it is. And I think it's kind of cool. So I don't mind having plastic bags inside my babies. Like I said, it reminds me of the crinkly diapers. I actually have bought the plastic diapers. They're so expensive. Like people have like 5 and they get $200 for them. It's crazy. The vintage plastic back diapers. I love those things. I wish I had more of them, but I just can't afford them. They're so expensive. So yeah, I had bought a package of the Cabbage Patch Kid diapers because I actually wore those when I was a little kid. So when I was a little kid, when I was 8, I was the size of your average 3.5-year-old. I had stopped growing due to trauma. And then later in my life, when I was like 10, 11, I finally started growing again and I caught up to where I should have been. But when I was almost 9, I was like 35 pounds and I wore a 4T in clothing. So when I was 8, I was still in diapers at night. I know, kind of makes me a loser, but I had a lot of trauma in my life. I was still in diapers, and so I wore the Cabbage Patch Kid plastic back diapers. So when I saw them on eBay a couple years ago, I bought like, I don't know, there was like 10 of them in the bag. And I love the crinkly sound. Because, if you're older like me, if you're younger, like those diapers don't really make any difference. But if you're older like me, when we were babysitting and stuff like that, we remember those plastic diapers and how you'd pick up a baby and it would have that crinkly sound. And it was actually really cool. I mean, I know it's better for the baby's skin not to do the plastic back diapers. So I get it. But if you're a nostalgic person, the plastic back diapers are like, they bring you back to when we were young and I don't want to say when our kids were babies, because by the time my kids were babies, you know, they weren't doing the plastic diapers anymore. But when I was babysitting and when I was a baby, all the diapers were plastic backed. So you can sometimes find them on eBay for a reasonable price, but generally they're pretty spendy, the plastic backed diapers. Like outrageously spendy. Like I said, like five for like $200. I mean, that's crazy for five diapers, but they are like ridiculously priced. And people don't buy them for their babies, you know, they buy them for their reborns. So they can pretty much charge whatever they want. But that's the reason I think that people like them, is because it's nostalgic, you know, that for those of us that have a 19 at the beginning of our birthdays. You know, we're old and we remember the crinkly, and not only did they crinkle, but they smelled. They had, not in a bad way, they had a good smell to them. They were like scented. And you could pick up a baby and you would have that baby scent and the crinkle of the diaper. And it's I think the reason people spend so much money on them is because it's nostalgia. And I don't have a problem with that. I mean, like I said, I wish I had more of them. I wish I'd saved a bunch of boxes when I was young. If you know, if I knew then what I know now, right? We would make such different decisions. Like, it never occurred to us to save diapers, you know? Well, then again, I never thought I'd be into like dolls again or anything. Because even as a kid, I wasn't into dolls, you know? I just was never a doll person. So it's kind of surprising that I've gotten into them as an adult. So I was never really into them when I was younger. But that's okay. Okay, there is Taylor. There is Taylor, huh? Huh, Taylor? So pretty. Such a pretty girl. Oh, her hair is not even. So yeah, I have a lot of people who spend a lot of money on those plastic back diapers. Occasionally I can find them for like, I don't know, like 20 for $100, which is more reasonable. But generally they're pretty up there. They're pretty crazy expensive. So it's not like something you can buy all the time. But if you get some, it's fun, you know? It's fun to have the crinkle and the smell. Like I said, all the diapers were scented. So the babies, I think that's where that baby smell, like, you know, when people say I love the baby smell, I think that's what they're referring to, is like, it was actually the diapers that had that aroma. They did. They all smelled like they were scented. Like, I don't want to say baby powder, but there was a baby type smell. I can't remember like what it was. In fact, the diapers I wish I could find is when I was in, I don't know, I want to say I was like a sophomore in high school or something. We did a home ec project where we had to take care of a bag of sugar, you know, like a 5-pound bag of sugar, like it was a baby. And they had, I don't remember which, I want to say it was like, might have been Huggies. But anyway, they had a diaper, a limited time diaper that had little rosebuds on it. They were white and they had little pink rosebuds on them. If I could find those, but I have looked and looked and looked and looked, and I can't find any. But they did. They had little pink rosebuds on them. That's what I had. That diaper is what I had on my bag of sugar. And they were so cute. They were white and they had little pink rosebuds all over them. And then those were the girls when I think it was the Huggies, because they were doing the for her and for him diapers. And the boys, I want to say, had little sailboats on them. I think it was sailboats. Anyway, I have looked repeatedly for those diapers with the little rosebuds on them, and I can't find them. But they were so cute. They had little rosebuds on them. They were so, so sweet. And I haven't even seen anyone mention them. So, I mean, like, I almost feel like I'm hallucinating, you know? I mean, I know I'm not, because I remember them, but I almost feel like I was hallucinating. So, yeah. But I want to say they were Huggies for her. And then they, you know, there was a time period in like the 90s, or very early 90s when they, well, no, let me think. Was it? Yeah, it would have been very early 90s, because I was 15 in 1990. So it would have been like 1991 or 1992. They came out with the for him and for her diapers. And there was a limited time There was a time when they did back packages of diapers. They were limited time, and the girls had little pink roses on them, and the boys had little sailboats on them. And I have seen one boy's diaper on eBay that had the little sailboats on them, but I have not ever seen the girls that had the little rosebuds on them. And I would love to find a couple of those, because those would be awesome. So there's Miss Taylor. Oh, she looks so pretty. She's such a pretty girl. They really do a beautiful job. And I say they because I think it's a husband and wife, like reborning team, Elvira and Vladimir. And they do a beautiful job. But I just wish she was weighted better. That's all. I don't know who does the actual painting, if it's like one or the other, if one does the painting and one does the rooting. But if you look on eBay for Vladimir and Elvira, or even probably on Facebook, they're like a team, you know, they're like a husband and, I think they're husband and wife team. And so I say they because I'm not sure who did what on them. But if you guys ever see those little rosebud diapers, let me know, because I have been looking for them for years. I found, like I said, they were selling one of the little sailboat diapers for boys, but it was like $40 for the one diaper. And, you know, with my financial situation, I just can't justify spending that much money for one diaper. By the way, Taylor and Shiley are the same kit. They are both the Katie Marie by Ann Timmerman. So yeah, if you guys happen to see them, let me know, because I have been looking like off and on for the little rosebud diaper. I would love to find a couple of those, especially in like a newborn or a one size, because of my silicone baby. I would love to get a rosebud diaper for her. So if you ever see them, let me know. But yeah, I'll see if I can find pictures and post them on my Facebook, because I would love to show you guys. They were so stinking cute. And I remember buying that bag specifically because I fell in love with the little rosebuds, and I needed them for my bag of sugar. And then I think the rest of them, because I only needed like the one diaper, I think the rest of them I gave to a friend that had a baby. I want to say that's what I did with it, but I don't know. I was like 16, so. Yeah, we didn't have those think it over dolls. You know, the ones I'm talking about, where they like, you know, they have like a key in the back, and the teacher can see how often you fed the baby and how often you changed the baby and how often you comforted the baby. Like, you know, they didn't have those when I was young. So we ended up with like either a regular doll or a bag of sugar. And mine was a bag of sugar. They even gave us car seats to use for our bag of sugar. At the time, they were like buckets. You know, they were like the white bucket type car seat with the brownish liner. Yeah, and it literally looked like a bucket. It was shaped like a bucket, and you just plop the baby down in there. So they gave us car seats to borrow for our baby project, and then we had to take care of the bag of sugar for like a week. You had to take it to class with you and everything, and then you had to write, at the end of it, you had to write a report on what it was like to be a parent and all that. I think the baby think it over dolls are like way better at teaching teenagers. Because like with a bag of sugar, you could go home and just set it down. I mean, most of us, I think, kind of got into the project and like played into it. So I don't think we did that, but you could if you wanted to. I think the boys probably did that. And nowadays with the baby think it over, they can't do that. They can't just go set it down, you know, because it shows on the doll. The doll has like I don't know if it has like a computer chip, and so that the teacher can download like everything you did with the baby. So if you just left it in a corner, they would know that. But when I was in school, you know, because I'm an old person, they didn't have those dolls. So like some schools use like baby dolls. Most of the schools just used a bag of sugar. So yep, that was my baby. And you got to pick if it was a boy baby or a girl baby. And it's funny because almost all the girls picked their baby was a girl, and all the boys picked their baby was a boy. So, yeah. Because everybody had to do it. Like nowadays, I think they even like put you into couples, don't they? But they didn't do that when I was young. They like literally, everybody had their own bag of sugar. It sounds so weird to say it like that, because now you guys who are like just getting out of school or whatever, or young, you guys are like, a bag of sugar. What do you like? Yeah, we were, not only are we old, but we was a Poe generation. So we like, they didn't have all those fancy dolls. You got, your parents had to go to the store, and the school didn't even provide the bag of sugar. They gave you a car seat and some like 1 or 2 outfits to use on your bag of sugar, baby. And then your parents had to go to the store and buy you a bag of sugar, a 5-pound bag of sugar. And then there was all this joking in my house with my brother and stuff at the end of it. Was like, oh, we're going to eat your baby, because, he's a teenage boy, and that's the way teenage boys are. So, yeah, so he was all like, he was so excited the day it ended to make cookies with my baby, And then he sat around all day like saying, oh, I'm eating your baby, Teenage boys are teenage boys, But, yeah, so not only were we before technology, but we were poor too. We didn't even get a baby doll. We got a bag of sugar. And I lived in a pretty rich town. But, yeah, that's what they didn't see the need to like do the dolls and everything. You just had a car seat with a bag of sugar in it. And you had to bring it to class. And I think the girls were pretty into it, because I think it was kind of fun pretending to be moms. And then they wanted you to set your alarm clock to get up every 3 hours. Like, so you didn't have a baby crying, waking you up like they do with the baby Think It Over. They trusted you back then to get yourself up every 3 hours and pretend to take care of your bag of sugar. And you had to be up for like, I think she said it was that we had to be up for like 20 minutes, because we had to get up and change the bag of sugar and then give it a bottle. And they figured it would take about 20 minutes. I can be honest and say that I didn't probably get up the full 20 minutes every time, but it was fun. It was fun pretending. And see, that goes back to how you can see how reborns are helpful to adult women, because we had those projects when we were teenagers. And even then, the girls who were like 15, 16, 17 years old, they enjoyed role playing with the bag of sugar. You know what I mean? Like, even when I went out with my friends who were in my class, we went out one night to like an underage, I think it was a roller rink. We all took our bags of sugar, like our babies, with us in the car seats, and we just left them on a table, like all lined up. And I'm sure people walking by were like, there's like 5 car seats with these bags of sugar sitting in them. So it was kind of funny, but it just goes to show you, like, even though, they say, oh, it's for kids, like even older teenagers like to role play, The sad thing is I don't even think they have home ec anymore. I got to grab Tegan. Hold on. Yeah, I don't even think they have home ec anymore. So that's kind of sad, because like they taught us how to cook and how to, do all that stuff, like sew. And of course I missed the sewing days. I remember I made a shirt, and I somehow I sewed the part of the shirt on the closed, so you couldn't put your arm in, and it was a really ugly shirt. I'll tell you, my taste at 15 was not great. But I remember home ec. We would make cakes, and we would learn how to sew, and we learned budgeting, and we learned how to take care of a baby. Like, they brought dolls in, and we had to give them a bath. And yeah, home ec was lots of fun. And it really was useful in teaching kids, like, how to cook, how to sew, how to do basic, home study type things. And, the home ec class was basically, it was a classroom that had, 4 or 5 stations, and each station had, a countertop with a bunch of supplies and a stove and a sink, I would say the home ec was very valuable, and they should have never gotten rid of home ec. Hang on, I'm just checking the size on this. Okay. Making sure I had the right bloomers. Yeah, home ec was really valuable for kids back then. And they taught them skills that maybe their parents didn't. So I'm kind of bummed they got rid of home ec. I asked Caitlin I asked my daughter when she was in high school, if they did home ec, and she was like, what's that? I was like, oh, it's where you cook and you learn how to clean and budget and sew. And she was like, oh no, Mom, we do real schoolwork. Like, okay. But when I was in school, we had music, we had drama, we had like they don't have a lot of those programs anymore because of budget cuts, but they had home ec. Um, I remember the president's physical fitness testing. Yep, had to run the mile. That sucked. We had to climb a rope in gym class. Like, you know what's funny is like nowadays they're afraid to like let kids play soccer because they might get hit by the ball. But when we were kids, they would let us like literally climb a rope from the floor to the ceiling of the gymnasium. What is that, like 30 feet? And all we had at the bottom was like a thin mat. If you fell, like nowadays, if kids fall, they're like calling 911 and they're like, you know, calling the fire department and rushing them off to the hospital. When we were kids, you could literally fall from the ceiling of the gym and they would be like, okay, shake it off. You're good. It just goes to show you how they've changed, like how we treat children, you know, like when I was a kid, I remember one time, I think it was my 8th grade, maybe 7th grade, falling off that rope when I was almost at the top. And I mean, I landed hard on that mat, you know, and my gym teacher didn't like, you know, rush over to check and see if I was okay. I was probably like the 4th kid that had fallen off and they were like, all right, you're all right, walk it off. And that's how our parents were too. You know, if we fell or we like, you know, got injured or something, I mean, we literally had to be dying not to go outside and play. I'm not kidding. Like we had to literally be on life support. Because if you weren't on life support, your parents would be like, are you dead? Are your legs broken? Why are you inside? And it didn't matter if it was raining or snowing or anything. Like if you were, when you came home from, like, here's the routine. You got up in the morning, you made yourself breakfast, by the way, your parents didn't make you breakfast. And then you got yourself off to school. And if you missed the bus, you were just hoofing it, right? And you do like, you know, your total school time. And then you'd come home and you'd immediately change into your play clothes. That's what they were called. They were called play clothes. And they were more like your dingy, dirty clothes that you could get dirty without like too much guilt from your parents. And you'd come home. I think I watched like maybe one show when I came home. I don't know which one it was. Like I used to watch Inspector Gadget and this cartoon, Sebastian and Belle. I don't know if you guys ever remember that, but it was about a kid in like the Netherlands or something and his big white dog. Anyway, I'd watch those 2 shows and then it was like outside, you know, and you just had to be home when the streetlights came on, you know. And they deliberately put the streets on like later during my childhood so that, you know, we would be outside more. But if my mom ever called home or came home early and I wasn't outside, she'd walk in, you know, I could be like dying of the flu. And if I wasn't actually dead, she'd be like, are your legs broken? Why are you inside? So yeah, I mean, we had it much different as kids. And I wouldn't even say that it was bad. I mean, I think it was great. I mean, kids were self-sufficient. You know, like I said, if you got hurt, one time I fell and actually fractured my knee. And it got really swollen and my mom was like, oh, you'll be fine. Just walk it off. You know, when we were kids, we would get like gashes and need stitches and stuff. And instead we just pack some dirt in there and then you'd end up with this like blood dirt crust, you know. But that's what we did. You know, my mom would be like, put some dirt on it. Dirt's healthy, you know, like we had no concept of germs or anything like that. Like if you got a cut or something, you just threw some dirt on it, you know, because it would stop the bleeding. It's like that blood stop stuff, you know, that powder that you put on cuts nowadays. That's basically what dirt did. It like clotted it and it was crazy. Yeah, even though I had some really questionable parents in my childhood, I would say that my childhood as a whole, like in a general sense, was really amazing. I wish my kids had that kind of childhood because we had freedom, you know, we had independence, we had, you know, we were allowed to be kids, but we were kids with a purpose. Do you know what I mean? Like we built forts in the woods. You know, we had to find ways to entertain ourselves. You know, we didn't. And then, you know, the other time you'd get to watch TV was Saturday morning. Like up until noon, they would literally have cartoons on every channel. And so you would get up at like 6 or 7 in the morning and you'd grab your cereal or whatever and put on the cartoons, and you'd literally, that was the only time, maybe in the evening with your parents if you were watching like sitcoms or whatever, but the only time that you really had access to watch whatever you wanted was Saturday mornings. And parents would literally sleep in so they didn't have to watch that stuff. You know, they would like, they knew you were getting up at the crack of dawn and watching TV. And when I say watching TV, I don't mean like watching a big screen TV. Like the TV was like this big. And so we definitely had some good eyesight back then because we sat across the room and looked at a postcard and we could see it. It was great. But Saturday morning is when you'd get up and you'd watch your cartoons and watch your shows. And then the rest, and then it's like some parents, like my mom, would let us watch one or two shows when we first got home from school. And then it was like, okay, time to be outside. And then in the evening, you'd have dinner, you'd do your homework. And then there might be some like family sitcoms like Full House or Family Ties or Growing Pains that you get to watch in the evening if your homework was done. So right after dinner, you had to get your homework done because usually dinner was like at 5:30 or 6. And so you'd have dinner and then the lineup didn't start till 8. So you had like the hour and a half after dinner to do your homework. And then the lineup would start of the sitcoms. So, you know, like you'd get, you know, you had time to get everything done because we literally had like an hour and a half or 2 hours of homework every night. So yeah, that was basically our childhood. And it was, you know what, honestly, like, I'm not going to say that it was bad. I mean, my situation personally was bad, but in general, that type of like childhood was actually really good for us. We had to be really creative. I jumped off of the roof of a building once. Yeah, it was like 2 stories up. Just because I could. I don't know why I did it. Huntigan. I would never let my girls jump off a building, but I mean, you know, we didn't have any supervision. We just went out and did whatever we were doing. And my friends decided it would be fun to jump off a building. And I was like, okay, I can do it. We were jumping onto this little guard shack that was like really tiny that was next to it. I missed the guard shack, which is why I landed on the ground. But it, you know, it was a good childhood. It was a good era. And lots of bright colors. Like the 80s was all about bright colors. I remember having short sets that were like neon pink top with neon green shorts, neon orange shirt with neon blue shorts, you know, like those were, and then the scrunchies. I don't know if you guys remember the scrunchy jumpers. Like they were like cotton jumpers that had like what looked like scrunchies on the straps in the front and one in the back. They were so comfortable. I love those things. I tried to make one, but I can't sew to save my life. So I probably will never find one, but they were awesomely comfortable. And I had a really good time. So yeah, I liked bright colors. So alrighty, ladies, I hope you enjoyed the show today. And now we're going to say goodbye to the babies. And I will talk to you guys later. Have a good night. Bye, ladybugs.